Thanks to CuriosityStream for supporting my channel. As of June 1st, I've read 80 books this year, and while I would normally wait until the end of the year to make a video like this because obviously I'm not done reading, so I can't say what the best books that I read in 2022 were, I did think that it might be a good idea to do a video at the halfway point. That way, if I end up actually doubling the number of books that I've read so far by the end of the year, I'm not trying to parse through and find the best like 5 books out of 160. If you're new here, I'm Jordan. I'm a PhD student at MIT who makes videos about artificial intelligence, emerging tech, and grad student life, where this falls into that last category. If you want to see more videos like this, definitely let me know down below. If there are other books that you really like that you've read this year or in general, also definitely let me down below. I'm always looking for more things to read. And if you want to keep up with what I've been reading this year after this video, you can go follow me over on Goodreads. So our first 2 books are actually ebooks. I do a lot of nonfiction reading on my iPad because I like being able to highlight different passages in books and save them to Readwise so I can be reminded of those quotes later on. And the first one is a book that I actually read last week called Burn Rate, and I think it's probably one of the best books I've read this year. It's essentially a memoir about Andy Dunn, who was one of the co-founders of a menswear online direct-to-consumer clothing company, who also has bipolar disorder. And I've talked about mental health on this channel before. I may or may not do a mental health video sometime in the relatively near future, but it was a really interesting look into how his journey as an entrepreneur was affected, for better or for worse, by having bipolar disorder, and how he kind of got to the point where he is now, where he's managing the symptoms, managing the condition, and can live a relatively normal life. So I think so many books about entrepreneurs are often only highlighting the good sides or lean really hard into hustle culture. And I think that this was a really, really interesting memoir just in terms of not really leaning into any of those things and having a huge focus on mental health. Second book that I'd recommend, especially for anyone who's interested in learning things like machine learning or any other topic, is actually Ultra Learning. I read that on my iPad, and I think this book was interesting to me because it really focuses on effectively meta learning. So figuring out how to learn, and that's something that, especially someone with ADHD, can be challenging because a lot of the normal ways that we are taught things just don't necessarily work well for me. And it's something that I've really been, I think, unconsciously trying to do for a very long time, especially before I was diagnosed. But now that I am diagnosed, now that I primarily work from home these days, now that I'm doing a PhD, there were a lot of really interesting tips and tricks for how one might go about figuring out how to learn something in the best way possible for you based on your individual goals. So for example, you know, if you are interested in learning machine learning, but you're not planning on getting a job as like a machine learning engineer, then you would adjust how you would learn and what you would focus on based on that goal. So I think it's a really interesting book. I will probably reread it at some point this year. But yeah, I would definitely check that out if you are interested in learning how to learn. All right, moving on to the fiction stack. I tend to read fiction books in physical form. The first book on my stack is called Plain Bad Heroines. It is a, oh, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a murder mystery, magical realism, haunted boarding school book that's also very queer. So of course I love it. I have to read it again. It's definitely one of those books where they tell the story out of order. And so once you get to the end, you have the like, whoa moment. But I think the fun part about books like this is that you can go back and read back through them and pick up all of those details that you missed the first time around. So I really like this. I was surprised that I like this. It is a little bit slow at the start, and it's clearly very long. So if that's not something you're necessarily into, if you're looking for a fast read, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, but it was a surprisingly good read. I don't know what expectation I went into with this book, but I ended up loving it. Next up, we have a book that's actually been on my bookshelf for a while that I just never got around to reading, and that is The Other Black Girl. And this book, I don't want to say anything that's going to give away the plot, because I don't know, I think you have to read this book to understand why people like it so much. All I'll say is that in terms of my initial impressions of the book when I first started reading it and where the story ends up going, it went in a totally different direction in the best possible way. I don't know how to talk about this book without spoiling it, because I think it's very much one of those books that you just have to read. It's about a Black woman who works at a publishing agency, and she's the only Black woman who works there. And one day another Black woman is hired, and that is all that I will say, because I think, especially if you are a Black woman, which based on the demographics of my channel, you're probably not, but if you are, hi. There's a lot of points in it that I can definitely relate to on both ends, but there's also points that you just wouldn't expect to happen. It goes in a very different direction than I was expecting. That's all I'll say. All right, next up we have The Midnight Library. This one was another one where I think I just didn't read the synopsis before I started reading it because it was really highly recommended to me by a bunch of people. And I really liked this book. This one also gets into some mental health stuff, so content warning for suicidal ideation. And it takes a really interesting approach to kind of reckoning with mental health and the life you want to live and things like that. So it's also a relatively quick read, so I would definitely recommend checking this out. Second to last, we have another N.K. Jemisin book. So in my last video on this for books that I read in 2021, I had the whole 5th season series. This year I started reading The 100,000 Kingdoms. This was also very good. This was definitely great if you're into sci-fi. Highly recommend checking it out. Highly recommend checking out anything she writes. She's amazing. And then last but not least, this book, I feel the need to preface this by saying, so it's Project Hail Mary. I read The Martian several years ago and really liked it. And then I read Artemis, I believe in 2020, and I absolutely hated it. So when it came to reading this book, I really wasn't sure which direction I was going to go in. But honestly, I think this was better than The Martian. This was such a good book. This was an incredible story. I cannot recommend it enough. It's sci-fi set in space with aliens and lots of like interesting sciencey math stuff. I just thought this was such a cool book. So I would definitely, if you haven't gotten a chance to read it yet, would definitely pick this up. So those are the best books that I've read so far this year. Again, if there are other books that you think I should check out, you should definitely leave a comment. I would love to hear about them. And if you'd like to see more of the behind the scenes content on how I make videos on this channel, you should head on over to Nebula. If you haven't heard, Nebula is a streaming platform built by me and some of my friends, including people like Tirzu, Simon Clark, and Marquez Brownlee. On Nebula, you can find ad-free versions of all of our videos, plus bonus content in our Nebula Plus videos. You'd also get access to our Nebula Originals, which you can't find anywhere else, including a very good trivia show where I competed against Brian from Real Engineering and Dave from City Beautiful in a bunch of fun and bizarre challenges, including trying to build an IKEA chair while answering math questions. And the best way to sign up for Nebula is actually through CuriosityStream, who are kindly sponsoring today's video. CuriosityStream is a subscription streaming service with thousands of documentaries and nonfiction videos. In fact, if you're interested in behind-the-scenes content from another one of my friends, they've actually uploaded their documentary Behind the Spotlight to YouTube, which features how Mr. Beast became Mr. Beast, so I'll leave it in the end cards if you want to check it out, to give you a taste of the kinds of videos that you can get on CuriosityStream. CuriosityStream loves independent creators and wants to help us grow our platform, so if you click on the link in the description or use my promo code Jordan, you can get access to CuriosityStream for 26% off their annual plans, with Nebula included for free for as long as you are a CuriosityStream member. That's less than $15 a year. Signing up for CuriosityStream and Nebula is a great way to directly support my channel while getting to watch my videos ad-free. So sign up for CuriosityStream and Nebula at curiositystream.com/Jordan or using the promo code Jordan.